The Countdown Conspiracy, Chapter 5, Part 1. I don't cry. I take a lot of deep breaths, but I don't cry. Instead, I try to wrap my brain around what just happened. My forehead presses against the solar glass of my window, the cool touch helping to numb my emotions. I thought I'd prepared well for class, but clearly I hadn't prepared well enough. I swear, Column Potential Energy wasn't anywhere in our readings. I look over at my dresser, which I turned into a pseudo workbench last night. All right, Ruby, I say to the pile of parts strewn across the surface. I'm going to fix this. I'll study harder. We've had a busy few days with a lot of stuff to distract us, haven't we? We can do better. I swallow. Ruby, of course, doesn't answer. I imagine her whole again, her spider legs bobbing her blocky body up and down and her optical sensors winking at me cheerfully. I hug myself with my arms, stepping away from my window, deciding then and there that I need to rebuild her ASAP. Then my droidlet pings, interrupting my pity party. It's a text from Esteban. Our mentors are here! Our mentors are here! They're going to meet us at lunch! Best day ever! I have no idea who our mentors might be, but I can only hope that they haven't talked to Dr. Singh about how badly I did in astrophysics this morning. I sit in the dining room, only half listening as Esteban talks to, or rather at, Rahim, continuing his speculation from breakfast as to who could be our mentors. Rahim's 2 chairs down from me, and Esteban is in his chair next to me on the opposite side. So it's kind of hard to ignore their one-sided conversation completely. Do you think it will be someone from the rover teams? Maybe from JPL, ESA, or one of the ISS astronauts? Oh man, I hope we get astronauts. Tamaki wanders in, taking a seat on the far end of the table and flipping a small solar cell around his knuckles like a coin. Najma enters next, sitting across the table from me. And Anna joins us last, sitting beside Najma, which leaves only 2 chairs empty, the ones directly between me and Rahim. I straighten up, realizing I'll be sitting next to one of our mentors. There's a knock at the dining room door. It's Dr. Schuber in his sweater and blue jeans. Hope your first lesson went well. He says. We all watch him expectantly, and he laughs a little. I can see there's no distracting you. Without further ado, he steps aside. 2 figures walk through the doorway. All 6 of us promptly gasp, shriek, or manage some combination of the 2. Vladimir Kreshkov. Tamaki leaps to his feet. The solar cell he'd been playing with falls to the floor. My tongue feels so big in my mouth I can barely get a word out, but luckily Najma has less trouble. Lizzie Donaldson! She exclaims. Hi, everyone, the woman in the doorway says, waving. I'm still speechless. We get Lizzie Donaldson as our mentor? So what's for lunch? The Russian man asks, walking over and pulling out the chair next to Rahim. That means, sure enough, Lizzie Donaldson, the Lizzie Donaldson, takes a seat next to me. I'm barely listening as Dr. Schuber explains their roles to us. Lizzie Donaldson has been to space 8 times. She spent 744 days outside Earth's atmosphere. That's 17,856 hours. Oh my goodness. Keep it together, Miranda. Don't say anything stupid. So you must be Najma, Lizzie Donaldson nods across the table. Najma squeaks out a yes, her hands cupped over her mouth. The astronaut turns to Anna. And Anna, correct? Anna gives her a curt nod, but I can tell even she's rattled. Her gray eyes are absolutely gigantic. Then Lizzie Donaldson turns to me. And that makes you Miranda. Yes, I feel like I should say something more, but I keep my mouth shut. I managed my first word to Lizzie Donaldson without screwing up, and I don't want to jinx it now. Esteban Costello, Rahim Mahmoud, and Matsuo Tamaki, Vladimir Kreshkov asked the boys. Tamaki just stares at the cosmonaut, his solar cell lying forgotten on the floor. I feel a bit better about my own reaction, knowing even celebrities like him can be stunned silent when they meet their idols. And then there's Esteban, who is incapable of silence. Yes, sir, Esteban says. What an honor to meet you, and Mrs. Donaldson. He reaches over me to shake Lizzie's hand, then climbs up on his feet and leans even farther over to shake Kreshkov's. I have to bend way to the side to avoid getting squashed into Esteban's chest, and only just stop myself from leaning into Lizzie Donaldson's lap. This is so great! It's like he's trying to win the world record for longest handshake. I bore my eyes into the table. Okay, Esteban, any time now. When he finally sits back down, I waste no time in straightening up and bending away from the astronaut next to me. Sorry about that, I mumble. Lizzie Donaldson laughs. No problem. Now that you've been introduced, I'll let you all know each other, Dr. Schubert says. If you need me, I'll be in my office. Then he leaves, and a staff person brings us each our lunch. I'd ordered grilled cheese after my astrophysics disaster, hoping the cheesy goodness would take my mind off things. But now, with Lizzie Donaldson right next to me, I can't help but wonder if grilled cheese looks too childish. Eventually, I decide that not eating would be even weirder, so I go ahead and take a bite. Before we begin our meal, Kreshkov says, standing up. I pause, clutching onto my sandwich. Slowly, I pull it back, using my teeth to sever the strands of melted cheese stretching from the bread to my mouth. Kreshkov looks around the table. I would like to say a few words. Like Sasha, his W's sound more like V's. First, I want to say that I'm sorry some of you were attacked on your way here. I'm relieved that no one was seriously hurt. I glance at Raheem, who's tracing one finger over his bandaged hand. Esteban pats me on the shoulder, and Lizzie Donaldson smiles at the two of us. My face must be as red as the tomatoes on my sandwich by now. Second, I know there has been some suspicion over Russia and the attacks. Let me say, on behalf of my country, that we would never wish harm upon any of you. Ever. He looks directly at me, and I'm reminded of Sasha's words earlier today. We didn't do it. Kreshkov's eyes are like two dark asteroids barreling through space towards me. Why not look at Esteban and Raheem too? Come on, I wasn't the only one attacked. We'll be staying here with you guys up through your first practical, Lizzie Donaldson says. Then we'll leave to spend time with our families, but we'll be back again. She gives me a reassuring smile. I go back to staring at the table. And why did Lizzie Donaldson look at me instead of the others too? Maybe I just seem like the one who needs the most coddling. What do you mean, practical? Tamaki asked. Well, every 2.5 months, you get to go home for a couple of weeks to see your families, right? Lizzie puts her napkin down on her lap. Before you go home, you'll be given exams, including a practical exam. The first few practical exams will involve taking the space plane over the Launchpad Island, where you guys will get quizzed on liftoff procedures. All right, Esteban exclaims. Tamaki gives him a fist bump from across the table. We're already going to start training on launch procedures? Najma asks. Kreshkov nods. Yes. Preparing for space travel is what you're here for, after all. Speaking of, have you started lessons yet? Raheem nods. We had our first lesson today, astrophysics. And how did it go? The cosmonaut asks next. I want to sink under the table. Very interesting, sir, Anna answers. I believe we all have a lot to learn. I stare down at my sandwich. I can feel Anna's eyes on me, but I refuse to acknowledge her. I'll study even more tonight. I'll get better. How about physical training? Lizzie Donaldson asks. Is anyone interested in trying out the vertical treadmill with me tomorrow? Learn how to jog in space? I look up at her. Now that sounds fun. Mechanical engineering goes better than astrophysics, and my spirits cautiously lift. Dr. Bouvier doesn't pull any tricks or throw material at us that I've never heard of. We spend the time designing re-entry capsules that we'll get to build models of next week. 4 o'clock rolls around, and before I realize it, class is over. I walk back to our dormitory with Anna and Najma. Either of you want to work on our engineering homework together? I ask. I don't need any homework help, Anna scoffs, heading straight for her bedroom. I didn't mean that you needed help, I say, even though she can't hear me since she's already shut her door. Or that I do, I add under my breath. I don't understand, Najma says. Is she like just because you two tied at that advancing astronomy competition? I guess, I sigh, loading my re-entry capsule design onto our touch table. Najma follows my lead and does the same. I'm pretty sure Anna is convinced she should have won clear out. That was the first time they'd ever declared a tie after all. I'm sure you earned it, Najma reassures me. Why else would they give the prize to you both? I don't know how to answer that, which apparently is a theme with me today. After we get our work done, Najma turns in for the night. Despite mechanical engineering going okay, I'm not sure how easily I'll be able to sleep with my astrophysics failure in the back of my mind. So instead, I spend some time working on Ruby before heading to bed myself. People can say what they want about robots, but there's no arguing that they're fantastic listeners. Morning arrives much more quickly than I'd like it to. At 7, I find myself in the gym, lying in a harness of straps and metal posts. If it wasn't so absurdly uncomfortable, I'd be falling back asleep. Are all of these really necessary? Tamaki asked, pulling out one of the straps near his elbow. Sure are, Lizzie Donaldson says. Trust me, floating away when you're trying to exercise is one of the most annoying sensations ever. I laugh. It comes out a bit awkwardly, and I can't tell if it's because I'm lying on my back or if I'm just being doofy in front of Lizzie Donaldson again. We start running on the vertical treadmills while Tamaki grills our mentor on what blasting off into space feels like. I actually get the same feeling every time, Lizzie Donaldson. Lizzie answers. She asked me to call her by her first name, and I keep forgetting. First time, second time, 8th time, all the same. It's scary and exhilarating. Gets the shakes at least a little. But I wouldn't trade the feeling of shooting upward at 18,000 miles per hour for anything. I can't wait, Tamaki replies. I've talked to the ISECG about letting you guys actually do a short space trip in a couple of years, Lizzie says. A preparation trip, maybe to the ISS too. You mean we'd get to go to the new International Space Station? I ask, craning my head to look at her. Lizzie laughs. I don't see why not. No better training than actual space flight, I'd say. Awesome, Tamaki says, and I have to agree. A bubbling burst of determination fills me, and I push my legs even harder. Unfortunately, later in the day, I'm back to feeling soul-crushed again. Calculus is just as embarrassing as astrophysics was yesterday, and programming isn't any better. In both classes, we're asked to take pop quizzes that I very clearly take the longest working on. And what's worse, in programming, Dr. Schubert streams live feeds to show what our codes are doing in front of the whole room. Najma's and Esteban's run the smoothest, but mine has a bug somewhere I just can't pinpoint. My screen remains frustratingly empty.